akin?
Uy, dali kayo dyan. Kabila. Oh.
Masalimot.
Uy, dali.
Try.
Ngerlang ulaman na si Birds.
Ha?
Di tayo di.
Katay talo.
Ah, gagit. Nasa wala.
Golden Gate.
Golden Gate. Golden Gate.
Bison Gate.
Ay, kabayo.
Hoy, kay ko, dyan na ako. No.
Ay, ulanin mo na eh.
Hindi mo maniray, hindi mo maniray.
Sansal lang ako.
Hindi, araw-araw ka na. Importante ranagan. On! Yan ang sunrise. Sunrise dito sa Masada. Hello guys, for today's vlog, we're touring you to Kingherodpalace, the ruin built in Masada. King Herod is also known as Herod the Great, a Roman client king of Judea. Nowadays, King Herod's palaces are popular destinations among tourists. The Masada, Jerusalem, Jericho, Caesarea Maritima, and more. Moreover, he's known as Herod the Builder for his colossal building projects throughout Judea, including his renovations of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and the expansion of the Temple Mount toward its north, the Tomb of the Patriarchs in Hebron, the construction of the port at Caesarea Maritima, the fortress at Masada, and Herodium. Vital details of his life are recorded in the works of the 1st century CE Roman Jewish historian Josephus. Guys, we are now in Masada. And so, Masada complex was built by King Herod as part of an entire line of fortification on the eastern side of his kingdom. The big advantage is that it's situated on top of an isolated rock plateau akin to a mesa. It is located on the eastern edge of the Judean desert overlooking the Dead Sea. Herod the Great built 2 palaces for himself on the mountain and fortified Masada between 37 and 31 BCE. The palaces on Masada are divided into 4 groups. The first one is the Northern Palace. It is a villa, also known as the Northern Palace. The second one is the Ceremonial Palace, is also known as the Western Palace. Then the small palaces adjacent to the Western Palace that were used by the royal family. Magnificent buildings resembling small palaces used by the courtiers and administrative centers. The Northern Palace has 3 levels. The upper one, which was used as the king's residence, was on top of the cliff, and the 2 lower steps were built below the summit level and were supported in some places by huge retaining walls. Visitors to the palace were able to enjoy the spectacular views from it, as well as a relative cool point at Masada due to the high northern winds and the natural shade from the southern sun. Now, the upper level at the Northern Palace belonged to the king and his immediate circle. No one else was allowed in there apart from a few. The top deck of the palace has 2 separate parts, a semicircular balcony with walls on which, according to the researchers' hypothesis, stood columns in 2 rooms. The second part was a living wing with 2 rooms to the east and west enclosing an open courtyard. The walls of the rooms were decorated with murals in geometric and floral patterns. The tiles were built of black and white mosaic in the interlocking geometric patterns. A roof supported by 2 columns protected the inner parts of the entire courtyard. The column headings were of the Ionic order type, many of which were discovered lying in place. The entrance to the top floor and the entire palace was on the east side. The lower level was built below the middle level and 35 meters below the upper level and was the most magnificent of the levels. In addition, the center stood square hole and its walls were darkened to the edge of the cliff and supported by retaining walls. In the center stands a covered structure carried by pillars. The inner wall was the cliff wall that was covered with a layer of cement, and columns were attached to it. On all the pillars of the buildings were Corinthian capitals painted in gold. The lower part of the portico is decorated with murals in the form of stone and marble slabs. The floor of the portico was built of wood, and presumably part of the building was covered in order to protect the murals. In the southeastern, the corner of the lower echelon, a small bathhouse was erected. The Western Palace is a 4,000 square meter building adjacent to the center of Western fortification wall and near the Western Gate. In addition to being used as a residential building, The excavation indicated that it was central administrative and ceremonial center in Masada with four main parts. First, the royal living wing with suites built around the central courtyard. In the southern part of the courtyard was an entrance to a foyer, the walls of which were adorned with ornate plaster walls, and from which they entered the throne room. In this room were found four sockets that were used for a throne or for poles that supported the cladding above the throne. The bedrooms and dining areas were built on the west side of the courtyard. Another room, built along the entire length of the east side, was a foyer on the east side of the throne room, with a magnificent mosaic floor with the combinations of geometric shapes and images of fruits. Almost all historical information about Masada comes from the 1st century Jewish Roman historian Josephus. Josephus writes that the site was first fortified by Hasmonean ruler Alexander Jannaeus in the 1st century BCE. However, so far no Harmonian period buildings remain could be identified during archaeological excavations. Josephus further writes that Herod the Great, captured in the power struggle that followed the death of his father Antipater in 43 BCE, the siege of the last Harmonian king Antigonus II Mattathias, who ruled with Parthian support. According to Josephus, between 37 and 31 BCE, Herod the Great built a large fortress on the plateau as a refuge for himself in the event of a revolt, and erected two palaces with an endless food supplies. In 66 CE, a group of Jewish rebels, the Sicarii, overcame the Roman garrison of Masada with the Raid of Rus. After the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, additional members of the Sicarii fled Jerusalem and settled on the mountain top after slaughtering the Roman garrison. To Josephus, the Sicarii were an extremist Jewish splinter group, antagonistic to a larger grouping of Jews referred to as the Zealots, who carried the main burden of the rebellion. Josephus said that the Sicarii raided nearby Jewish villages, including En-Gedi, where they massacred 700 women and children. In 73 CE, the Roman governor of Judea, Lucius Flavius Silva, headed the Roman Legion X Praetensis and laid siege to Masada. Another source gives the year of the siege of Masada as 73 or 74 CE. The Roman legion surrounded Masada, building a circumvallation wall, then a siege ramp against the western face of the plateau. According to Dunhill, geological investigations in the early 1990s confirmed earlier observations that the 114-meter-high assault ramp consisted mostly of a natural spore of bedrock. The ramp was complete in the spring of 73 after probably 2 to 3 months of siege, allowing the Romans to finally breach the wall of the fortress with a battering ram on April 16. The Romans employed the ex-legion and a number of auxiliary units and Jewish prisoners of war, totaling some 15,000. An estimated 8,000 to 9,000 were fighting men in crushing Jewish resistance at Masada. A giant siege tower with a battering ram was constructed and moved laboriously up to the completed ramp. According to Josephus, when Roman troops entered the fortress, they discovered that its defenders had set all the buildings but the food storerooms ablaze and committed mass suicide or killed each other. 960 men, women, and children in total. Josephus wrote to steering speechless that the Sicarii leader had made convince his men to kill themselves. Only 2 women and 5 children were found alive. Okay guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoy watching my video. Thank you so much. See you on my next vlog.